What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 456 of #AskGSM here today for Wednesday, August 24th, 2022. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. In case you missed it, check out my interview right now from last Friday here in audio form on the channel and in article form over on Bleacher Report with the Rated R superstar Edge himself, talking all about the match with Damian Priest on Raw, his A&E doc, and a lot more. Coming up on either Friday of this week or Sunday, I'm not exactly sure yet, will be my interview with Rey Mysterio, also talking his A&E doc and a lot more. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple of days. Ray was great. We'll get right into it. If you guys want to send in any questions for the show for me to answer, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/gram.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Starting with the YouTube questions, Micah does it from YouTube. He's got two questions. First one being, if we're getting Punk versus Moxley tonight for the title, that must mean we're getting MJF versus Punk at All Out, the pay-per-view, with MJF winning the world title, right? Not necessarily. I still have no idea what they're doing tonight with Punk and Moxley. I'm convinced that we're getting a match and that we're getting a finish. I mean, they could do a DQ. I don't think it's an angle where they promote it all week and then they don't actually do the match. I think that'd be pretty shitty. That's typical WWE bullshit. I would not do that if I were Tony Khan. I assume we're getting... The way that I see this playing out is that we're getting the match and then they just do a rematch of the pay-per-view. Meltzer mentioned something along those lines a couple days ago. That's how he sees this playing out. If it's not that, MJF could come back. Then you have to explain why MJF is getting a title shot. Someone brought it to my attention yesterday, which I completely forgot about. I know they announced the casino battle, not the battle royal, the casino ladder match for All Out. It didn't really get a lot of fanfare. It was announced in a quick graphic on Rampage, I believe, on Friday. But we are getting that this year. Someone brought it to my attention yesterday that maybe MJF enters that and he wins that, and that's how he gets a title shot. He's not in the top 5. He hasn't been in the top 5 in a long time. He rarely wrestles. Obviously, he has not been on the show in many months. It would not make a whole lot of sense for him to come back after being punished and not mentioned on TV and then to get a title shot. So him winning that ladder match, why he would be officially allowed to enter, I don't know. But that would be one way of achieving that. But that would even require him to enter the match at All Out and winning it there. I don't see a scenario logically where MJF comes back tonight and gets a title match next weekend. That would be incredibly fucking dumb to do Punk and MJF, or Moxley, probably MJF, on 11 days' notice. Because the pay-per-view is next Sunday. We have Dynamite tonight, we have Dynamite next week. I barely count Rampage because the show just doesn't really matter most of the time. And then there's the pay-per-view. So I think it's dumb as it is they're doing Punk and Moxley tonight. And they very well may do the rematch at the pay-per-view. Maybe they had a stipulation. I still think it's dumb they're doing it on TV a week and a half before the pay-per-view. The more I thought about the MJF thing and I thought that was a possibility, it still could happen, but I'm not guaranteed or convinced it will because logically it just doesn't make any sense. So honestly, I hope that doesn't happen because if they were to waste MJF's big storyline and coming back and winning the world title in a week and a half, that would be prime WCW, WWE bullshit booking. So I really hope they do not do that. His second question, if you had to choose your own entrance music to walk out to a WrestleMania, what song would you choose? You know, I thought about this for a while. I don't know, because a lot of the music I like is either already entrance music in WWE or elsewhere, or is related to a WWE pay-per-view theme song or another company or whatever. A lot of these songs, a lot of the music that I like, in some form or fashion, has ties to professional wrestling. So it's hard to say. One of my favorite songs of all time is Cult of Personality by Living Colour, CM Punk's theme song. I would be completely directly ripping off him if I were to come out to that at WrestleMania. I think more to myself, because again, a lot of the music I would come out to in a wrestling ring has already been used, or is currently being used. But, and maybe there's other songs I would use, they're just not coming to mind. I think of it more as, in a very cringy sense, if I were to come out to a song at, let's say, a wedding or a special event that was where entrance music was not required, but it made more sense and it was less cringy, it probably would be Cult of Personality. Not only because it's one of the greatest wrestling theme songs of all time for CM Punk, but also just because it's a genuinely great fucking song, and a lot of people recognize that song without even being wrestling fans. So I'm going to tweak your question and use that as the answer. We'll go to Facebook now. No L. Their first question was, thoughts on the whole winner takes all at NXT versus NXT UK Worlds Collide event. It seems like we are getting that for the main event of Braun Breaker versus Tyler Bate, and it seems like they're doing that with the women's match too. I'm almost sure of it because Blair Davenport's in the match, and if it was purely champion versus champion, why the fuck would she be in there if the titles weren't on the line? So, honestly, I have no issue with it. We do not know when NXT Europe is becoming a thing. They just got rid of a majority of the roster probably 80% of the NXT UK roster late last week. So that tells me NXT Europe is not starting up anytime soon. It may not be well into mid-2023, because if it was like right around the corner, even in January or February, you would think they would maintain the roster and they wouldn't let anyone go. I mean, they literally held on to these people under contract for, 6 months back in 2020 during the pandemic, doing nothing with them until they were able to run shows again. So, with that being said, I would be surprised if it launches anytime soon. And if it's not launching anytime soon, why have champions for a brand that doesn't technically exist? And yeah, you could hold on to the titles in NXT, but we already have enough championships in NXT. So I'm honestly okay with them merging the championships. Braun Breaker is probably going to become the NXT UK champion, which is a little weird, but fine. Tyler Bate has already held the championship before. He was the first champion. It makes sense for him to be the last champion. What bothers me, though, and get rid of the tag team titles, too, and the fucking Heritage Cup bullshit. What bothers me, though, is that it seems like it's going to be Mandy Rose taking the NXT UK women's title. And that really bothers me. I'm actually in the minority of people who have enjoyed Mandy's run so far in NXT, enjoyed the title reign. I have no issue with it lasting as long as it has. She's not the greatest worker in that division, not by any means. But I like the character work and how she's been built up and how she can kind of escape title defenses. She has to lose at some point. The thing is, I do not want Nikita Lyons, and it's clearly headed in this direction. I do not want Nikita Lyons taking that title from Mandy Rose. That is clearly where they are going with this with Mandy Rose. And I don't know what's worse, Nikita Lyons being the one to end Mandy Rose's reign at almost a year, or Mandy Rose ending Meiko Satomura's reign of a year plus, which is fucking ridiculous. So, Meiko Satomura is legitimately one of the best wrestlers in the world, not even women's wrestlers. She's fantastic. So her losing to Mandy Rose, who I like, to me, is simply unrealistic. The way I see it playing out is Blair Davenport is in that match to take that losing fall. And even if Blair Davenport wins both belts, that would be a better option. But I can't see Mandy Rose's reign of almost a year ending without her either being pinned or I just feel like that would be weird. Unless they call up Mandy Rose sometime soon, and it doesn't sound like they're doing a draft anytime soon, which is fine with me. I'd rather wait until after WrestleMania anyway. That, to me, makes more sense. They're probably calling up Legado as a full faction soon, as we saw in NXT last night. They're reunited, which is good. Doesn't make much sense as to why they were still in NXT anyway. Why weren't they just banned per the stipulation, but whatever. They can bring up Toxic Attraction all at once. I mean, Gigi Dolan and JC Jane were just on SmackDown last Friday before Gigi got hurt. So they can call them all up at once, the SmackDown or whatever. I think that would be fine. And if they do that, then they can take the championship off of Mandy Rose. I would preferably take the belt off of Mandy via Meiko Satomura. She's fantastic. Continue her long reign as NXT UK champion, which they'll probably retire that title, but I'd rather see her in control of that division. I don't even know if they would keep her around, to be honest. I don't think they would let her go, but I assume that she'll remain under contract and maybe show up every once in a while. She doesn't exactly fit the vibe of NXT 2.0, which is a good thing because she's better than a lot of the bullshit they do in that division, or just on the show in general. And NXT has gotten better in the last year, I will say that, but then again, we had a fucking lights out match between Wendy Chu and Tiffany Stratton last night, so I'm not sure how much better it's actually gotten. But nonetheless, I would put the belts on Meiko and have her run through that division for the next year, or however long until they find someone suitable to take those belts from her, whether it be Blair Davenport or someone else. I really do not want Mandy Rose winning, but I mean, it sounds like all the NXT people are taking all the fucking belts. I'm fine with, who are the NXT Tag Team Champions? The Creed Brothers? Yeah, them taking the UK titles from Briggs and Jensen, I'm totally fine with that. Those belts are fucking useless at this point. If they do something with the Heritage Cup and the North American title, obviously Carmelo Hayes should win that too. Braun Breaker should be Tyler Bate. I don't see Braun Breaker losing to Tyler Bate. I don't want Mandy Rose's reign ending via not getting pinned by Blair Davenport, but I would prefer that over Mandy Rose taking both belts. So I know they don't give a fuck about NXT UK. They're getting rid of the show. Why have their champions go over? From a purely talent standpoint, Mako versus Mandy, Mako should be walking out with both belts. Just my opinion. No second question here. Thoughts on the whole backstage heat with CM Punk and AEW? I talked a bit more about this in length on WrestleRant Radio last week, the same day the news broke on the whole CM Punk drama. I think it's fucking entertaining as hell, to be honest with you. As someone on the outside looking in, so to speak, I think it's entertaining. I'm a Punk fan. I'm not excusing all of his behavior, but there's probably more to it than what we know, than what's being reported. I don't think anyone's a saint in this situation from what it sounds like. And honestly, for me as a viewer, it makes the shows more must-see because it makes me very curious to see what they're going to do tonight on the show. So I don't know what they have planned. I honestly have no clue, but I'm very curious to see. Maybe they take the belts off of Punk. Maybe they take the World Championship off of Punk due to this newfound backstage heat on him. Does his run last shorter than what we thought? I mean, who knows? I don't think this is really going to go anywhere. I think Punk's here to stay. I think he's happy there. He probably just has issues with one or two people, maybe more. Who knows? I have no fucking clue, but it's entertaining for me as a viewer because one, it makes the shows more must-see, and two, Tony Khan has got to take control of his fucking ship. I think it's just entertaining how people are kind of painting him out to be a saint in this, not this thing specifically, but I mean, this is what happens when you have a wrestling fan run a wrestling company, and that's not a bad thing, but there has to come a point where you take control of your company. Otherwise, it's going to be late WCW all over again. Not to say Eric Bischoff was a mark or whoever was running WCW at that point was a mark, but they let the inmates run the asylum, and you can't have that be the case. You can't have this drama dominate the behind-the-scenes setting in AEW. The environment and the atmosphere make it as toxic as it was, presumably as it was in WWE or still is or whatever. So he's got to take control if he hasn't already figured it out. Hopefully he has, and like the MJF stuff, they'll turn it into an angle, because the MJF stuff started out as very real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Oh, it was a work from the beginning. No, it was a very real situation that they turned into a shoot and incorporated it into the show. If they were smart, they would do the exact same thing with this Punk stuff. Maybe allude to it, whatever, on the show tonight. Maybe turn it into a more of a, they go back to the Punk and Page feud a lot sooner than we thought in the next couple of months based on these real-life heat comments or animosity between the two. Real issues and stuff like that, when you blur the lines between reality and storyline, it makes the show stronger. At the same time, though, you do have to keep it under control so it's not just a mess backstage. So I'm very curious to see where this whole thing goes. I don't think Punk's going anywhere. I don't think his run is over. I don't think he's quitting. I think he's helped a lot with AEW and made the shows a lot better in the last year with what he's done, the matches, the promos, the storylines. I think he's had a fantastic first year in AEW. I don't think it ends because of some dumb backstage drama between him and Adam Page. We'll see where it goes, but I am very curious to find out. We'll go to the Twitter questions here. First one being from @RebornAgain, John Ritland from the Twitter Machine. Check out his YouTube show as well, Real Honesty with John Ritland. His first question was, so the theme for Clash of the Castle is being done by Our Lady Peace. Do they know what they're causing the fans to say? No, I'm very curious to know how that came about. Like, who picks the music for these shows? First of all, it sounds like a good song. Second of all, they're a Canadian rock band, Canadian band, whatever. So it was interesting that they introduced the song and they announced that it was going to be the pay-per-view theme song in Canada last week on SmackDown. You would think they would use like a British band or an English band or whatever, as they have, like they did for the NXT TakeOver show in London a few years ago. That was by the Struts, I think, who are an English-British band or whatever it might be. And they're very good, too. They've used actually other songs by them for the main roster. I think for TLC 2015, I forgot the name of the song, but they've used music by them for other stuff. But no, they used Our Lady Peace. Obviously, as you could probably tell, Our Lady Peace is the same band that sang the theme song for Chris Benoit. How many people actually realize that, though, I'm sure is very, not minute, but I feel like it's the vast minority. I knew that. You knew that. A lot of people probably wouldn't even remember that Our Lady Peace did the Benoit theme song. They know the Benoit song if they heard it. Some people probably don't know that's the name of the band that did it. Clearly, WWE has not used them for anything in the last 15 years. It's not like they were using them on the regular prior to that point anyway. So it's not like they were using it, it's like AC/DC, and then all of a sudden we didn't hear any more Our Lady Peace. I think they only did the Benoit theme song, and that was it. And from what I understand, they don't do the Benoit song at concerts anymore, but it's cool that they're using them. It's cool they got incorporated into the WWE pay-per-view. And it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, it's just the joke between us, but I haven't really seen a lot of people make a big deal about it. It's not really that big of a deal, but I think it's cool that they're using Our Lady Peace, and it sounds like a good song. But I thought that was funny, though, that they used that band of all bands, considering, just the tie-ins with Benoit. But it's good that they don't have to suffer for his consequences, and they can continue to have their music used in a variety of places. I think that's really cool. At Boss Antelope 86, their question was, do you think Clash of the Castle will be a good pay-per-view? I do. I don't know what's going to be better between that and All Out. I feel like All Out, the AEW pay-per-views are usually fantastic. WWE's are usually hit or miss, but then again, a lot of their pay-per-views this year have been great. They've had a strong streak of shows on pay-per-view in 2022. So it could be a toss-up, but I do think it's going to be a good show. We got Baszler and Morgan for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Nice dynamic there. Riddle and Rollins should have a great match. The 6-woman tag team match, Bayley, Io, Dakota versus Bianca, Alexa, and Asuka should be very good. And then the top 2 matches, Roman and Drew for the Universal Undisputed WWE Championship. I mean, no shit, that's going to be great. And Gunther versus Sheamus for the Intercontinental Championship, which is also going to be fantastic. So they could add more matches. That's the card as of right now, but I'm very pumped for it. The crowd alone should make that show. If they are quiet, if they're underwhelming, I would be very disappointed. So hopefully they bring the energy, because on paper, WWE is giving them a great show. So hopefully the wrestlers deliver, the company delivers with the booking, and the crowd delivers. All of that thrown together is the recipe for a fantastic pay-per-view. So I do expect it to be a good show, hopefully better than good, and it will be great, because I thought SummerSlam was very good. We'll see, but I do expect it to be nothing less than at least a good show. Back to John here for a second. As you could probably tell, I did not put the questions in a document, so everyone's questions are all over the place. I apologize. I've gotten very bad at doing that lately, so I got to find the time to do that before I record. But anyway, second question was, fans in attendance recorded footage of Edge saying that he wanted to have his last match in Toronto. Say it's next summer. Who should it be against and why? Anything can change in the next year. Honestly, the first name that came to mind after reading your question was Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is from Canada. He's always wanted to work with Edge. They had one match, and that was at an MSG house show that I was actually in attendance for the day after Christmas last year. It was a steel cage match. They had a pretty good match. For a house show match, it was pretty good. And Owens was a heel. He had just turned heel. Edge was the babyface, as they are now. Because Owens has gone back and forth, and Edge has gone back and forth, but those were the roles then. Those are the roles now. And I think it'd be cool to revisit that and do that as Edge's final match. If it's going to be in Toronto, which, when I heard Edge say that, I want to retire in Toronto at this point next year, which, honestly, that's a wait-and-see approach for me. I don't believe that 100%. I know I spoke to Edge last week. I talked about how, I asked him when retirement is going to be coming for him, basically, and he said, I can feel it. I'm just enjoying my run while I can. He's not going to tell me, I want to retire next August or whatever, but I feel like he just said that, ideally it would be cool to retire here in Toronto. I mean, how do they even fucking know they're going to be in Toronto next year? Does he know they're going to SummerSlam for Toronto in 2023? So, I mean, how would he even know that, So I find it hard to believe he will retire in August, specifically in Toronto next year, unless we knew for a fact that SummerSlam was going there. If it ends up getting announced that they're going back to Canada for SummerSlam, then I would be like, okay, then that's probably happening. If not, then I'm not exactly sure when it's going to happen. It could be next year. He did sign, I believe, a 3-year deal in 2020, and next year is going to be 3 years, probably after the Rumble. It could be 3.5 years, whatever, but I would prefer it to be against Kevin Owens. It would be cool if Christian came back and they had one more match together in Canada, but I don't foresee that happening. Christian's in AEW for the foreseeable future. He just signed last year. From what I can understand, it was a multi-year deal, so it would be cool for them to end their careers against each other, which I think was Edge's original plan 10 years ago when he was supposed to retire before he was forced to retire. I'm pretty sure his idea was to have his final match at WrestleMania against Christian, maybe put him over or whatever, but that would be cool. I don't see that happening. Other people, assuming Edge is a face, if they're going to be in Canada, if he wants to retire in Canada, he's got to be a babyface, obviously. We've already seen him and Roman, him and Rollins had amazing matches. Him and AJ already faced off quite a few times. I think it would probably, Kevin Owens would make the most sense. So I'm hoping that's what it is. Especially if it's in Toronto, that crowd would be electric for that match, regardless of what show it's on. His next question, with reports of some talents being frustrated in AEW, Do you think the company should address any of these issues and how, i.e. lack of TV time, matches out of nowhere or worse, sitting on the sidelines for weeks after debuting, etc.? I think they should address the issues, probably not to us. I don't think that's necessary. What I like about AEW is that it sounds like if they have problems, not that every issue has been addressed. For example, the women's division. I cannot complain about this enough. The treatment of the women's division, for as much talent as they have, I think Britt Baker is very good. Thunder Rosa is great. Toni Storm is fantastic. Jamie Hayter they picked up, she's great. Athena is very good. Ruby Soho have all come in the last year, which is great. They've really stocked up their women's division. They still don't have any meaningful storylines or any meaningful television time. That needs to change. And Jade Cargill has also been built up very well. They have the talent. That's not the issue anymore. It's how they use the talent, or the fact that we're not really seeing them a lot. That, to me, is their biggest Achilles heel right now. I said it on WrestleRant Radio last week. I may have said it here on the show a week ago. I've said it a lot lately, because it's ridiculous that we're not getting more of the women's division in AEW on Dynamite specifically. Maybe on Rampage, but at this point, who gives a fuck about Rampage? So, I do think that Tony Khan, it sounds like he's running a lot of things himself, which is not a good idea. He should have more of a team in place. The good thing is what I was going to mention before, is that when they have issues, they seem to address them and hopefully attempt to take care of them. For example, the big thing with, I think it was Jonathan Gresham, Joey Janela mentioned this recently, getting in contact with Tony Khan. I mean, it's like getting in contact with Vince. Probably better because Tony Khan seems more approachable. But this guy wears so many hats for not only just AEW, but all these other companies and teams and promotions he works with and owns and whatever. It's almost impossible, I'm sure, to get in contact with him. And that's not his fault, but he has to put more of a team in place to kind of ease that communication process. So they heard those complaints from Janela, from Gresham. He didn't complain about it publicly, but that was the report as to what happened there. And then they put in place a team like a week or two ago announcing that they have a new talent relations team, and Madison Rayne helping out with the women's division, and Sanjay Dutt? Yeah, Sanjay Dutt. I was thinking he was still in WWE, but he's in AEW now. Obviously, he's fucking with Jay Lethal. Not literally, but you get what I mean. So he's a part of that team. They have Christopher Daniels on that team, QT Marshall, among others. So they addressed that. Whether that's actually alleviated any of those issues, I don't know. But listen, it's an attempt. Just to kind of throw around these press releases and not doing anything about it would be bad. They're just false words at that point. But it sounds like those issues are being worked on, which is good. The other stuff that you mentioned needs to be addressed as well. I do think Ring of Honor launching its own show will help with that. I maintain that. Not to make excuses for them, but I do think the Ring of Honor show will help with the bloated roster in giving these people more TV time. The problem with that, though, is that we have no idea when Ring of Honor is getting its own show. It's been many, many months since Tony Khan purchased Ring of Honor, almost 6 months in a couple of weeks. And he's made comments about, we're working on it. That's great, but in the meantime, you have a lot of frustrated talent who are probably upset with the fact they're never on the fucking show. Brian Cage, I mean, how he even got re-signed, and I like Brian Cage a lot, to me makes absolutely no fucking sense. I mean, how is that guy even still there? Even if they plan to use him for Ring of Honor, which doesn't sound like it's going to be imminent, he's just sitting there doing nothing. He's not even on the show. He's not even on the show. So the lack of TV time is appalling for some people. The matches out of nowhere or worse doesn't really bother me. We see that in WWE a lot. I'm not excusing it, but that's not one of their bigger issues, I think. Sitting on the sidelines after weeks, for weeks after debuting, that's a big problem as well. And that's a lack of TV time. They don't have the TV time that WWE does. Everyone in WWE, for the most part, is on TV weekly, or at least the bigger stars are, which is good. And you don't have to be on the show every single week. But we get VTRs, and they're 15 seconds, blink and you missed it. If I'm fast forwarding through shit, if I'm watching it after the fact, I miss it almost every single time. That happens a lot. And I just think they need to do a better job of, managing that. And whether it's bringing in more of a team to help Tony Khan with that, or just limiting the roster, getting rid of some of the dead weight, which, to their credit, they've done. We talked about it here on the show at the beginning of the year. Who in AEW, if their contracts are up this year, would I get rid of? Joey Janela almost led every single list for a lot of people. Maybe not the number one person, but he really served no purpose on that roster anymore. He's gone. Fucking, what's his name? The guy with Marco Stunt with Jurassic Express. He's gone. They had no use for him. He was a very pointless addition to that roster. He served his time well in Jurassic Express, but he had no business being on that roster in 2022. Luther is still there, who I think is just absolutely fucking terrible. But, it seems like he has a presence backstage. He helps with the talent. He's a trainer, whatever. All right, cool. But there's a lot of other people. For everyone that they've let go, they've also brought in more people. They hired that Cole Carter guy from NXT, who was also in AEW first, that Tony Khan didn't want to sign initially, which to me is weird. And then they put the guy after an impressive showing on Dynamite against Ricky Starks a few weeks ago. They went ahead and put him in fucking The Factory, which is even worse. So, I don't know, man. They have a lot of stuff they have to figure out. Again, they don't have to come out with a press release saying, oh, we're going to fix the TV time for the talent. Like, no, they don't have to. I'm not saying that's what you're suggesting, but they have to look at themselves in the mirror, talk to the talent, make it clear that, all right, we're going to either use you or we're not going to use you. Because that's the thing with WWE, too, that in the past, and maybe this is still an issue with Triple H in charge, I don't know, they have to make it clear. If you do not have any plans for anyone, make that clear to them, and then either let them go, or at least with Tony Khan, seemingly he allows a lot of them to wait out their contracts and then just doesn't renew. That's basically a release. You were with the company, and then you're not with the company. It's just not that you weren't fired before your contract was up. So that to me makes sense. It's still a release, but it's not a release in the sense of what we tend to expect with WWE. WWE just lets go of people in bulk, like the NXT UK people, even with Triple H in charge. I'm sure those people's contracts were not up, but they let them go anyway because they had no use for them. But that should be part of it too. If you have no use for someone, and especially if they want to go, then let them go. Don't have them lingering on the roster doing nothing, unless they want to and they're just collecting the paycheck. That's fine. I don't want to say let go of those people if they're enjoying catering and whatnot. But I do think it's weird that they have so many people under contract and on the roster that we barely see or are just not used meaningfully. Hopefully they can address that, work on it, and maybe not fix it overnight, but start to really work on those issues. Now that we have the roster, you have to start focusing on said roster and not just looking towards what's next. And the same issue is going to come with WWE. You can't bring back people every single week. But the good thing, at least with WWE, I will say this, is that so far, everyone they've brought back, as RJ alluded to me on over text the other day, they all have direction. Whether you like it or not, they all have direction. Hit Row, feuding, for better or for worse, feuding with Maximum Male Models, as we saw on SmackDown last week. Dexter Lumis doing the Miz thing, as we saw on Raw. Johnny Gargano, right off the bat, feuding with Theory. That, to me, makes perfect sense. Dakota and Io have immediate direction in Bayley's group, feuding with Bianca, Alexa, and Asuka. And then Karrion Kross feuding with Roman and Drew. So it's not like they're just there to be there. Like, we will have that case a lot in the past, especially with people getting called up from NXT. They'll get called up and then they go on to do nothing. But it sounds like that issue is starting to bleed over in AEW where they sign people and we don't really see them for weeks at a time. And then it's like all that momentum is gone and I just don't care anymore. At DWilson_1990, who are some of the names that you see returning to WWE next year now that Triple H is in charge, including some names currently in AEW? I've answered this question a few times in the last couple of weeks. I mentioned, I think it was even as recently as last week, I mentioned Gargano, who obviously happened on Monday's Raw, and that was not a bold prediction. We all figured he'd be back at some point. It was more a matter of when than if. And I said Bray Wyatt, again, not a bold prediction, but I assume he will be back at some point, hopefully soon. Bray, Candice is a shoo-in. I heard Bronson Reed might be brought back. I saw that name floated around earlier. That to me would make sense. Tegan Knox, I mentioned. I heard she can't compete right now due to a visa issue. The thing with that, though, would that be resolved if she was like rehired to WWE? Wouldn't that count as her employment and she would get that visa stuff sorted out? Or would she have to, like, that's what I don't understand. Like, I know the Iconics couldn't go anywhere for a while due to their visa stuff, but wouldn't getting hired by a promotion fix that? That was my question, so I don't know. I would love to see Tegan at Clash at the Castle in Cardiff, but I just don't think that's going to happen based on her comments. But she could be just bullshitting and she's just saying that to get people off the scent, and then she shows up, which would be amazing, and I think she'd get a great reaction in Cardiff. Anyway, and maybe she's like the new member of Bayley's group. That's also very possible. Bayley with Tegan, I think, would be fucking great. I really do. I mean, she would get a big pop in her hometown. Maybe she joins Asuka and Bianca if Alexa Bliss gets hurt or something. I don't know. But either way, I think that'd be really cool. So those names, as far as people in AEW, the top name that comes to mind, you could say Adam Cole, you could say Keith Lee. It sounds like those guys are down under lock and key to that company for a while. Malachi Black and Adam Cole, convention, are going to be under contract for quite a few years to come, like for the next 4 or 5 years. So I don't see them going anywhere. But depending on how long he signed for, Andrade to me seems like a shoo-in to go back to WWE. The best he has been booked in the last 6 or 7 years since he left New Japan was in NXT under Triple H. He had the greatest run of his, North American career, because I know he's been in Mexico and Japan. He had great runs over there. But I feel like he felt like the biggest star in NXT under Triple H. Not to say he didn't have success on the main roster. He had a lot of good matches. He was a United States champion for a little while. Wasn't completely buried, but at the same time, he wasn't as big as he probably could have been. Zelina was the perfect manager for him, and then they just broke that up for whatever reason because Vince is an idiot. So his wife is still there. He's not having a bad run in AEW, but Andrade's run in AEW has been very underwhelming. He really has not done much at all. He's lost every feud he's had, whether it be with, the babyfaces, Darby Allin, the Hardys, and that whole group when he broke away from them earlier this year. He lost that feud. Him and Roosh are doing a team thing now, which is good. I think that's the best use of Andrade right now. But the HFO or the AHFO or whatever the fuck you want to call it, that was a failure. He lost to Cody Rhodes, and he's lost to all these other people. I think he lost to Pac ultimately, too. He just really hasn't had this electric run. Sammy Guevara, another person he lost to a few times. He just hasn't had the great run I was hoping for. And, again, the match last week, he was in the main event of Dynamite with Dragon Lee and Roosh, and they already broke up the Dragon Lee trio because they beat him up afterward, which was fucking dumb. I don't know, man. He's someone that I would like to see get another shot in WWE. You can put him with Charlotte. I know people have always pitched that. I never actually really liked that idea. I know they're a couple in real life, and it would be something different for Charlotte. I just don't sense any. Maybe, obviously, in real life, they're married, so they have chemistry, but as an on-screen couple, I do not see that at all. Their characters just do not mesh at all. Andrade with Zelina just made a lot of sense, and I wish they would go back to that, especially with Zelina currently not doing anything. And not to say they should keep her off the show until Andrade comes back, because we don't know when that's going to be, but the number one name in AEW I see going back to WWE probably first, and I know we already had Cody, but Andrade probably within the next year, depending on how long he signed for. It could have been a 2-year deal. And if that's the case, he wouldn't be allowed to leave for another 8 or 9 months because he was brought in around May. So, beyond him, like I said, Cole would be cool to see back. All of Undisputed Era, Malachi Black, Keith Lee, all deserve second shots, but it won't be Swerve too. None of them will be there anytime soon. If they ever go back, it will not be anytime soon due to the length of their contract, and they're all being utilized fairly well in AEW. I mean, Swerve and Keith Lee should be bigger than they are. The tag team stuff to me is a complete waste of fucking time, but at least they're doing something, and it's not like they're not on the show. And at least they're champions, so that counts for something, not everything, but it's at least something, and their reigns have been, their runs so far in the company have been fine enough to where I'm not complaining about, they should have stayed a free agent and gone to WWE or whatever, gone back to WWE. No, it's fine. They're fine in AEW. Ultimately, would I like to see them go back there? Sure. Adam Cole deserves a real shot on the main roster. Keith Lee, too. Malachi Black getting his old music back would be amazing. But again, that might not be for another, several more years. So I wouldn't hold your breath quite yet. At Kyle Rochelle 19, their question was, I know that Gigi Dolan is injured, but can Toxic Attraction still be on the main roster this year when she's cleared and whenever Mandy Rose loses the NXT Women's Championship? I think they all did what they can do, all they can do on NXT. You're right, they have. Toxic are former 2-time tag team champions, Gigi Dolan and JC Jane, and Mandy Rose has been champion, the NXT Women's Champion, for like 10 months. So yes, they have done all they can do on NXT. When the time comes for Mandy to lose, and I would have that be a Clash at the Castle, yeah, you can call them up soon after. I really do not want to see Mandy Rose and Nikita Lyons. I cannot make that any more clear. I have no desire to see that fucking match whatsoever. But yeah, I don't know if it would be later this year. I don't know if they would wait until the draft. If you wait until the draft, then Mandy will not be champion, I don't think, until April. If they wait to do the draft until April, which I think they should, do you keep Toxic on the show until then? If Mandy loses the championship soon, how much more will she really be doing on the show until they get drafted? I don't know. You can bring them up in the Rumble. You can bring them up at the end of the year. To me, it doesn't really matter the brand because both brands have tag teams and they have talent, and they're adding more talent to each show currently. So probably SmackDown if I had to guess off the top of my head without really looking at the rosters. But yeah, they will be on the main roster at some point, and with Triple H in charge and Shawn Michaels running NXT, and there's more, cohesion there between the two and more synergy between the main roster and NXT, I would hope and expect all three to be called up simultaneously. I say Mandy Rose called up. She's already been on the main roster previously for multiple years, but I think it would make sense for them all to be brought up together as a group and not Mandy Rose on her own or just Gigi and JC or just Gigi or whatever. No, they all go up together as a trio, and maybe at some point we could see them with Damage Control. I know they're all heels, but that would be a very interesting matchup with Mandy and Toxic Attraction, especially given the history that, Bayley, she doesn't really have a lot of history with Toxic, but Dakota Kai and Io Sky do. They both lost to Mandy Rose and failed to win that championship in multiple points in 2022. So, at some point down the road, that would be very interesting. At Iwagu91, or rather before then at Boss Antelope 86, who's walking out as NXT Women's and World Champ at Worlds Collide? I mentioned this before. I see Mandy Rose winning for the women, and I see Braun Breaker winning for the men. I just see all the NXT people winning. And I hate to say that. I want to give some love to NXT UK. They have a lot of great talent, or at least they did. What's left is great. Tyler Bate does not need to beat Braun Breaker. I'm fine with that. Braun Breaker, they're clearly building up. I'm okay with that. I'm still very much against the idea of Mandy Rose beating Meiko Satomura's reign and ending her reign. I am not okay with that. Because the issue for me has always been, who will be the one to ultimately beat Mandy Rose? To me, the answer probably would have been Cora Jade or Roxanne Perez. They both now have lost to Mandy Rose multiple times. That is not going to happen. It's not going to be them. It's not going to be Kaylee Ray. She already lost to Mandy multiple times. They're not going back to her. She's done. Who else really even is there? They called up Io. Dakota got fired and then called up. Raquel's gone. She's not winning the belt back. It's got to be Nikita. I don't want to see Zoe Stark win the championship. I would rather have her than Nikita, but I think it's going to be Nikita just based off what they've teased and their interactions and their last match ending in a non-finish and a DQ or whatever. So I just have this awful feeling that's where they're going with this, but I would rather see it be Meiko. My current prediction, though, and it might change in the next week, my current prediction is Mandy Rose and Braun Breaker walking out with all the belts next Saturday, or next Sunday, rather, at Worlds Collide. At Iwagu91, their question was, would you like for Drew McIntyre to bring back Broken Dreams at Clash at the Castle? I'd be an idiot if I said no. Absolutely. I know he tweeted the lyrics to the song a few weeks ago, and it got people really hyped. I think that'd be great if he brought it back. Win, lose, or draw. I mean, hopefully it's not a draw, but regardless of what the result is, him coming out with it would very much boost the chances of him winning the championship. It's hard to have an entrance like that and then lose, but it's happened before. It has definitely happened before. A lot of the people who get elaborate entrances at WrestleMania then go on to lose anyway, like the live performances and shit. So that would not shock me. I honestly would rather see Roman win, and I do not want to see Drew to be the one. Talking about like Mandy, kind of on that similar note, I do not want to see Drew be the one to end Roman's very lengthy run as Universal Champion, Undisputed Champion, whatever. I'd rather see it be someone else who can really benefit, like a Cody Rhodes or someone else like that. Drew is not the worst option. Brock would be worse, because Brock's not a full-timer. I just don't want it to be Drew. That being said, he could still come out with the music, and the crowd would go nuts. If there was any place to do that song and give it back to him for one night, it would be on that show, and if there's any crowd that would know all the lyrics, it would be that one. If you don't do it there, you kind of lose every chance that you have of having him come out to that music at any point in the future. England would probably go nuts, or Canada maybe, and some of the cities here in the U.S. maybe around WrestleMania time. If it wasn't at WrestleMania itself. Even at WrestleMania, it's a big risk. I think the best place to do it is your UK WrestleMania. That being Clash of the Castle next weekend. So that's what I would do. His next question. Would you like to see Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay? Yeah, that would be an amazing match. I know Will Ospreay is going to be in Dynamite tonight with Aussie Open facing Death Triangle. I do not see them winning, unfortunately. They never really seem to win. I don't think they've ever won a single trios match in AEW. Have Will Ospreay and Aussie Open. But anyway, Danielson and Ospreay at some point I think would be amazing. So I am excited to see that at some point, and I think we will once Bryan makes his way over to New Japan when that time comes. What are your thoughts? Final question here from @Iwagu91. What are your thoughts on Kushida competing on Impact? I've probably mentioned this before, but I feel like he's the perfect fit for that promotion right now. I love Kushida being in Impact because it allows him to still do the New Japan stuff, which I'm not sure how much of that he's done lately. I know he returned about a month or two ago, but I would love to see Kushida do more New Japan stuff and hopefully maybe pop up in AEW for a one-off or whatever. But I love the fact he's an Impact because he gets to work on his own, and he gets to reunite with Alex Shelley and the Motor City Machine Guns. They're actually doing a trios match, a six-man tag team match on Thursday's Impact with them and Violent by Design. They're calling the trio of Kushida, Sabin, and Shelley Time Machine because of the Time Splitters and Machine Gun. That is fucking clever. That is really, really clever. So I'm looking forward to that match. That should be great. But I love the fact that Kushida's in Impact. That was the first move I wanted to see him make as soon as he left a couple of months ago. As soon as he left WWE, I'm thinking I want to see him in Impact. He would get lost in the shuffle in AEW or whatever. He'd get lost in the shuffle over there. Him in WWE was a fail towards the end, and NXT didn't really use him correctly towards the end. Could he be brought back with Triple H in charge? Maybe. I mean, it didn't sound like that would be the case based on an interview he did recently with New Japan, but not that he would tell them, oh yeah, I would like to go back to WWE, but, maybe Triple H was the one who brought him in alongside Regal, and they were high on him initially, so maybe. I don't see that being the case, but regardless, he is killing it in Impact right now, and I continue to say, if you're not watching Impact, either on the regular or checking out their pay-per-views, you are greatly missing out. They have an amazing roster, some very good storylines, and specifically some great matches on the weekly. Literally, as I've said before, my favorite weekly wrestling show of the week at this point. I know that was a weekly wrestling show of the week, whatever, but, Raw and SmackDown are improving. I like Dynamite, but Impact is a consistently great show every single week, and they rarely disappoint. So I would, again, check out Kushida's work, but check out Impact on the whole. I don't think you'd be disappointed. If you watch a couple of episodes or watch a couple of their pay-per-views from the last couple of months in 2022, I do not think you'd be disappointed. The lack of fans in attendance has been disappointing, obviously. The crowds are not what they once were. But if they had more fans, I feel like more people would be paying attention to Impact. If they had that bigger fight feel and fuller arenas, then absolutely, because they wouldn't feel, not as Bush League, but as small in the scale as they do, because they've lost so much of their fan base and so much of their audience and, people in the crowd over the last 10 years. But it's a shame because I feel like this is the best the product has been in a very long time. I know that wasn't your question, but I want to plug Impact here because they're doing great work, and I'm looking forward to Bound for Glory in early October. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 456, I think I said this was, for hashtag AskGSM. Yeah, episode 456. Thank you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. Be sure to, if you want to send in a question, tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below, and I'll include your question in next week's video. Have a great rest of your week, folks. As I mentioned earlier, the Edge interview already up from last week here on the channel. And my chat with Rey Mysterio coming to the channel in a few days, so check that out when it drops, and an article form over on fansidedailyDDT.com at some point this weekend. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.